Hey guys, today I'm just going to go over my process in making this painting sketch. I did this in Procreate, so luckily I have the benefit of a pretty comprehensive time lapse. So I'm just going to dive into it. So just right away, I'm just starting with a pretty rough sketch, just trying to get out the general idea of what it is I'm trying to paint. In this case, I just wanted it to be like a bald, like super muscular dude. So I'm really not super worried yet about like super accurate anatomy or anything like that. I'm just trying to get my ideas down and then refine from there. So yeah, here's where I go in on top of the sketch lines, and I start to sort of drill into more, I guess, more precise drawing. I'm starting to really define things, starting to drill into the anatomy and the shapes that I want to push. Like the nose here, this is big, like blocky wedge shape. And with this style, which is a lot more defined than like past styles I've used, where things have probably been a little bit more painterly, this style really focuses on like defining things and pushing shape language and really pushing things to anatomical extremes, like the broad chin and the big blocky nose and the heavy brow shelf there, and the probably cartoonishly small cranium, and the sort of like outstretched ears. So anyway, so yeah, I'm just getting a little bit into the shading. I'm not shading a whole lot. I'm just sort of trying to define shapes and planes as best I can. I'm really gonna get more into shading later when I get into the painting process. So yeah, necks are kind of a challenge for me, so I think I had to look up some anatomy references there. Okay, so finally we're getting into the painting. I'm just laying down a base skin tone. It's probably a little darker than you would think its skin tone should be, but that's because it's like a mid-tone. So I have a mid-tone so that I can get darker and then lighter from there. So yeah, what am I doing here? This is kind of odd. I'm adding these layers of like yellow and red and blue. So when I was in figure painting class, what I kind of learned is like the face or skin tones have this sort of shift from top to bottom, especially in the face in particular, where like the forehead is like a yellow, and then the middle is like a red, and then the bottom, like the chin / mouth area, for men at least, is really cool and blue, and possibly even a little bit olive. So that was the reason for that. So now I'm getting into shading, or I was getting into shading. I'm going a little too slow. Okay, so I did the shading in blue and red tones, and now I'm getting into the highlights, using a nice cool color to contrast with the warmer tones of the skin. So I'm leaving it like, I started with it fully opaque just so I could map out where the planes were, and then later I'm fiddling with opacity and blending modes. Yeah, here it's all flickering because I'm trying different blending modes in the layer, and now I'm going in with like a sort of a warmer light to sort of dull down the super coolness of that highlight. Now I'm adding a bit of a little dark base for the tiny little layer of hair that I'm going to put there later. So now I think is where I flatten everything, or I duplicate and flatten everything, and then I actually start painting. So I'm just kind of jumping around randomly in the face now, just kind of starting to define things a lot more and dive into a little more details in the color, and sort of picking where I want the colors to contrast with one another, sort of like adding like complementary tones, and maybe some reflected light too. That's a complementary or like a cooler tone in comparison to the warmer skin tones. So it's a little hard to see like where I'm at right now, because I'm probably getting like really fine with my detail work, but yeah, I'm adding like hue shifts to shadows. I always try to make like the edges of shadows nice and warm, especially when it's a cast shadow, because that's kind of how shadows naturally work, especially on skin, is like the edges of them will be like super warm and red. And we're about halfway through now. Yeah, so now I'm getting into the reflected light. You can see that cool tone under the chin and the jawline there. Diving into some details in the lips, getting those highlights in there. As I'm doing this, I'm generally hopping between maybe like 2 or 3 brushes. I have my own custom brushes that I've made that have this like grungy, pastel-y grit to them, and then I use Tara's Oval Sketch, which I'm sure you've heard about. If not, definitely Google it. It's a great Procreate brush for sketching, as its name implies. And I'm also using from the Max Pack, which you may have also heard of. I'm using the pastel shader. And these are also brushes that another artist I follow uses. His name is Kole, and I've watched his process before, and he uses pretty much exclusively the Tara's Oval Sketch and the Max pastel shader. But like I said, I have some brushes of my own that I tend to use sometimes. They don't work as well in Procreate. They work a lot better in Photoshop. So now I'm getting to the neck. I'm having some troubly wobblies because neck anatomy is always weird to me, and it's always easy to like way over define it like I did where the sternocleidomastoids connect with the clavicle. So I think I had to bust out some anatomy reference books, and yeah, that's when things started to improve. Always make things easier for yourself by pulling reference if you need to. Never be ashamed of doing that. In fact, that should be the default. You should use reference as much as you can. But sometimes I just don't feel like it, and I feel like feeling my way through something. But in this case, it was just getting frustrating. So things are looking like super defined, especially in these like muscle strands here. But I'm doing this on purpose so that later I can sort of dull it down by just doing like a quick translucent pass of like a skin tone, and then that'll like dull that like hyper definition down a little bit. But I just wanted to put it there so I sort of know for myself what I'm painting, what I'm laying down. So at this point, it's almost done. I have some lines that are still kind of hanging out there that I'm gonna clean up at some point, but looks like I'm getting into the hair now, or at least a base for the hair. Yeah, see, now I got rid of the lines because everything is masked to that initial base color. So I don't, accidentally go over those lines I've defined for myself. So after I get rid of the lines, then I can do things like this, where I'm expanding his chest area and I'm getting into I think I got into the hair already, but the little bristliness of the hair at the top. Yeah, so you can see I added a nice color gradient. That's always nice, just to tie everything together. If it graduates from warm to cool, like I did, that really creates a sense that the light's hitting him from the top, nice and warm, and it's cooling down as the light recedes. And that is it. Thanks for watching.